Hello, beautiful people. How are you guys doing? It's been a while since I made a video, and been going through been going through my life a lot, and really just wanted to take time for myself and focus on my healing journey, and really gain insight into my life and sort of the way that I was affected, and decide from then on how I wanted to sort of come out and share my information with you guys, or share my story with you guys in a way that can help people out. I think going through this process, I've truly realized that we're not alone, that there's virtually everyone that you see and you bump into is going through something, and they have, they're carrying with them lifelong traumas, whether they're aware of it or not. And so, just to kind of give you guys a bit of a background on me, and hopefully this can help us connect better. I was born in the Middle East. During the war, we actually escaped Iran at that time, during the war between Iran and Iraq. Went to Pakistan, lived there for 2 years. This is when I was about 8 years old, and we got sponsored by my uncle. Came to Canada, and from there on, it was just, the bullying started. I was dressed differently, I spoke differently, my teeth were all mangled. I was just basically, teased, in any way that you could possibly imagine. And I think at that time, Canada hadn't become as diverse of a country as it is now. And so things like racism and bullying and things like that could have been more prevalent than they are today. I think less people stand for it now. And obviously, countries have become so diverse that, people don't really get away with the same things they used to get away with before. And so, upon moving to Canada, I really saw the cultural dynamics in place between a country which is very, what they would call it, collectivist, in Iran, which is, everyone really bonds together, a lot of enmeshment, and compared to a country like Canada, where individualism is very much emphasized, where people break away a little bit earlier. Becoming more independent and living your own life is emphasized more. And so I really saw the dynamics play out in my parents, and a lot of the things they went through, a lot of the battles. In the Middle East, men are quite a bit more. They have all the power, really, especially at that time. And coming to a country like Canada, where there's a lot of equality and women have a lot of rights. And so I saw a lot of problems between my parents. They ended up getting divorced. Due to the divorce, I moved so many times. Ended up going to 4 different high schools. I don't know how many people have had to do that. One of the high schools I went to twice, so I had to change schools. So I graduated 1 year late. So I changed high schools 5 times in 6 years, just to kind of show you the sort of the craziness that was going on at that time. And so, during this time, me being the youngest sibling, I had a lot of battles, not internal battles. Well, those I had as well, but just sort of battles within the family, being scapegoated. I don't know if the scapegoating, there could be so many things, you guys, that leads to the scapegoating. Sometimes parents have a children that they don't want, or they never wanted, maybe they weren't ready for. When I look back, or when I do look now at a lot of the people that I knew back in the day, there was a lot of, it's very, very common, particularly from what I've seen in families coming over from the Middle East, where parents really, you see the golden child and the scapegoat dynamics play out. Parents from these countries typically have, they typically overvalue one child compared to the other one. It's almost like when you it's almost like having a second child just so the first child can have something or someone to play with. And so it's not really for the true love or the true desire of wanting to bring another child into the world and wanting to care for that child. And so I went through a lot of craziness within the family. And one of the things that was most tragic was not just sort of what I suffered in the family, but how that actually impacted every other aspect of my life growing up, whether it was my job, whether it was my relationships, substance abuse. I want to make a video about that because I think that's a big one. And yeah, the addictions, self-harming things or self-sabotage. It's all really interrelated, and so I dealt with a lot of that growing up. And I had gone through some personal things in my life, which really led me to therapy. And I had spoken to a couple of therapists before, but I didn't really find anyone that I could really connect with. And my life had become such a mess that one day I remember I went online and I searched for therapists, and I saw a picture of this one guy, and I'm like, I want to speak to him. And so I called him and made an appointment. And from then on, it was like, for the first time in my life, I was able to connect with someone in a non-judgmental, safe environment where I was heard. Growing up, I didn't have a voice, and that greatly impacted my life. And so I just went through so many things, so many failures in relationships and things like that in my life, careers. But I always knew that there was something deeper that I needed to find. There was a greater part of me that I hadn't yet discovered. It was like I was living with this truth inside me that I knew, but no one else wanted to hear. And so it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I had enough. Enough was enough. I started breaking away from my parents. I started with one parent, which growing up I always felt was the more sort of the overt, so sort of the more angrier, the more abusive type of person. I started there, and then I started just sort of moving down the line and creating boundaries. And I've had to go no contact with a couple of my family members, and now with pretty much all of them. One of them, very, very, very little contact, and even that, I'm trying to find a way to, I don't know, not have a relationship, but I try to think about how I can live my life in a way where when I look back at things 20 years from now, I can be very proud of the person that I've become and very proud of the way that I handle things. One of the things that's helped me so much was gaining distance. If you guys don't know, I was originally after having moved from Iran and living my whole life in Canada, and sort of reaching that point where enough was enough. I sold everything I had in Canada. Anything that was given to me as a gift or anything that had anything to do with that life, I got rid of it. I donated things. I had a couple of bags, and I just left. I went to Costa Rica. There was a person that I knew there, so I felt like I had one person that I can kind of cling on to because it was such a scary thing for me. I remember growing up, being in Canada, and like if I saw somebody move from one part of Canada to another part of Canada, I'd be like, "Oh man, that's crazy! Like, what a big move, you know?" But it's so crazy, guys. When we reach a point in our life where we've had enough, don't underestimate what you're capable of. And so I went to Costa Rica. From Costa Rica, obviously economically, I had to sort of plan for my life because I wasn't planning on coming back to Canada and restarting my life. So I had to make the little bit of money that I had last me. And so from Costa Rica, I went to Panama, and Panama's expensive. They use the US dollar, so everything is more expensive there. And then from Panama, I had to find another location. I was with someone, the same person I was in Costa Rica. I was in Panama, and I realized that I was actually staying with someone and spending time with someone that wasn't a good fit for me, and I started seeing traits of covert narcissism within them as well. And so one night I packed my stuff quietly. Next morning I left and went to Colombia. The reason I went to Colombia was because I had a couple of Spanish tutors that I was working with online, and they were there, so at least I felt like I had someone or something or people that could at least guide me a bit. Obviously it helps going to a new country, especially like South America, and having a couple of contacts. I spent a year in Colombia. From Colombia I left. Now I'm in Peru. I've been in Peru for 13 months now, and I just feel like the more time I've had away, the more insights that I've been getting. And the more insights, the more I've been able to heal certain things. And one of the scariest things is like, the more insights you get is like you realize how profoundly we're affected growing up in these families. And so the more that I found out and the more insights that I was getting, the more I could understand how my inner self was screaming for help. And looking for a different way to live. And so I've been in Peru for 13 months. And I have really no plans right now of going back to Canada. I feel like I still have things that I'm working through and I want to heal. And it's interesting. I grew up thinking, I was one of the guys. There's so many people like this, big house. I want a car, and this. I had like a nice car, and making money was so important to me. And as you start healing more and more, and it's like now I've been renting like Airbnbs and stuff like that, living with other people. I don't have a car, basic clothes. I walk around everywhere. I take Transporte Rápido is what they call in Spanish. Well, in Peru here, they got like these mini buses. They take you everywhere really quick, super cheap. And I'm just like sitting in these buses and I'm thinking like, man, I don't need shit to be happy. Like, yeah, of course I want to have food and have shelter. And of course those things are good. But I started falling in love with regaining myself. And the more I regained myself and started constantly facing myself, I'm like, this is where the glory is at. I feel like this is the foundation of life. I feel like going through our lives and finding out how we're affected and working on fixing ourselves so that when we get into relationships, we're not hurting other people, we're not damaging we're not raising kids and passing our traumas onto them. And so I just wanted to circle back because I've been away for a while, and I've been sort of trying to think about how I want to direct this channel and sort of the things that I want to really talk about. And the things that I want to talk about and the things that I've sort of mentioned are not such in a way of like dumping on people and the things that they've done to me, but in a more of a sense of like how we can turn that around to be one of the best things that ever happened to us, and using that to really catapult us forward. Because if we never had these bad things happen to us, we never would have a real reason to look at ourselves. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about sort of my life and my story and how I got here without going into too much detail. And I really plan on continuing this process. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm very dedicated to staying on this path, educating myself and finding ways how to put my best foot forward. One of the things I realized was like, when you're not healed in certain areas, the triggers that we're faced with, how we're triggered in certain aspects, and how emotionally taxing it is, dealing with these triggers and insecurities and things like that. And so really I've made it like my lifelong dedication now, and my commitment to really find more of myself and to put my best foot forward. And so I know there's a lot of you guys out there, being in Peru, being a Canadian, and being in South America, talking to people. I see how many people have kind of gone through this stuff, and if they haven't, it's like they're probably not aware of it, that they've gone through it, and so they haven't gone through that awakening experience. And so this is just the sort of like a video to come back around, share with you guys a little bit about sort of what I've been up to, and sort of what I plan on doing. And I think as hard as it is to face these things, it's worth it. It's interesting. I saw a post by Jordan Peterson that said, one of the best things you could do is have the responsibility of having children, because having this responsibility of another dependent, there's nothing greater than that. And although I believe he's a very smart person, I think he's done amazing things, a wealth of knowledge. But I'd say more that our number one responsibility is to ourselves, and to figure ourselves out, regain a sense of ourselves, what's important to us, and that's the number one responsibility, is fixing ourselves and not jumping into relationships and marriages, having kids, things like that, as a means of like sort of distracting us from what the real problem is. So just wanted to circle back with you guys, and I hope everybody's been doing well. Thank you so much for taking some time to tune into my channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Thanks for watching.